Hello friends, this is teacher JB. Let us study English. We are studying the book English Grammar in Use, and today we are going to study Unit 15, Past Perfect. Past Perfect. So let us study the example situation first. She's Sarah and he's Paul. Sarah and Paul went to the same party last week, but they didn't see each other. Why? Paul left the party at 10:30 and Sarah arrived at 11 o'clock. So when Sarah arrived at the party, Paul wasn't there. Why? He had gone home. Had gone is called past perfect. Look, had is past of have or has, right? So had gone. Had plus pp. We call this had plus past participle. So had plus pp. This is the form of past perfect. I, we, they, you had gone. He, she, it had. So this past perfect, every person uses had. Had gone, has seen, had finished, etc. The past perfect is had plus past participle, gone, seen, finished, etc. Sometimes we talk about something that happened in the past. Sarah arrived at the party. Simple past. This is the starting point of the story. Then, if we want to talk about things that happened before this time, which means Sarah arrived at the party, we used past perfect, had plus pp. When Sarah arrived at the party, Paul had already gone home. So Sarah arrived, but Paul was gone. Some more examples. When we got home last night, we found that somebody had broken into the flat. So flat is apartment. In British English, they call apartment flat. Okay. So we got home, but before we got home, somebody had broken into the flat. So let me use a little bit darker ink. Karen did come to the cinema with us. Didn't. Why? She'd already seen the movie. So she saw the movie before we tried to watch the movie, and then this is now. So Sarah watched the movie before we watched it. So Sarah had already seen the movie. At first thought, I'd done the right thing, but soon realized that I'd made a big mistake. I thought I had done, realized I had made. The people sitting next to me on the plane were nervous. They had flown before. They hadn't. They were nervous, but before they didn't have any experience. They hadn't flown before, or they'd never flown before. Compare present perfect and past perfect. So this is past, this is now. From past until now, present perfect. Now, past and another past. So from past until another past, so that's past perfect. Let's go back to present perfect. Who is that woman? I've seen her before, but I can't remember where. So in the past, from the past until now, I haven't experienced to see her. We aren't hungry. We've just had lunch. We are not hungry. We've just had lunch. The house is dirty. They haven't cleaned it for weeks. I wasn't sure who she was. I had seen her before, but I couldn't remember. I saw her before, but I couldn't remember. So I'd seen her. We weren't hungry. We'd just had lunch. We weren't hungry because we had lunch. The house was dirty. They hadn't cleaned it for weeks. The house was dirty. They didn't clean the house for weeks. Compare simple past and past perfect. Simple past. Was Tom there when you arrived? Yes, but he left soon afterward. Past perfect. Was Tom there when you arrived? No, he had already left. Kate wasn't at home when I phoned. She was at her mother's house. Kate had just got home when I phoned. She had been at her mother's house. Now let us do the exercises. Read the situations and write sentences using the words in brackets. There was a picture lying on the floor. Was a picture. Why? It had fallen off the wall. The people sitting next to you on the plane were nervous. It was their first flight. They hadn't flown before. You went back to your hometown recently after many years. It wasn't the same as before. It had changed a lot. So before you went to your hometown, the town changed. It had changed a lot. Somebody sang a song. You didn't know it. You didn't know the song. So I had not heard it. I had not heard the song before. I invited Rachel to the party, but she couldn't come. She had already is optional. She had already arranged to do something else. To do something else. Okay. You went to the cinema last night. You went to the cinema last night. You got to the cinema late. Now, the film had already started. Last year, we went to Mexico. It was our first time. So we hadn't been there before. We hadn't been there before. I met Daniel last week. It was good to see him again after such a long time. I hadn't seen him for 5 years. For 5 years. I offered my friends something to eat, but they weren't hungry. Why? They had just had lunch. So this had is auxiliary. This is past participle of have. They had just had lunch. Sam played tennis yesterday. He wasn't very good at it because it was his first game ever. So he had or he'd, you can say he never played tennis before. He'd never played tennis before. Now, use the sentences on the left to complete the paragraphs on the right. These sentences are in order in which they happened. So, A happened before B, B before C, etc. But your paragraph begins with underlined sentence, so sometimes you need the past perfect. Somebody broke into the office during the night. We arrived at work in the morning. We called the police. We arrived at work in the morning and found that somebody had broken into the office, so we called the police. So this is the first thing happened. Laura went out this morning. I rang her doorbell. There was no answer. I went to Laura's house this morning and rang her doorbell, but there was no answer. There was no answer because, okay, let's say she had, so went out, she had gone out. If you want, you can say she had already gone out. Joe came back from holiday a few days ago. I met him the same day. He looked very well. I met Joe a few days ago. Just holiday, very well. So I met Joe a few days ago. He had just come back from a holiday, and then he looked very well. James sent Amy lots of emails. She never replied to them. Yesterday he got a phone call from her. He was surprised. Yesterday James got a phone call. Got a phone call from Amy, and then he was surprised. He had sent Amy lots of emails, but she never replied to them. She never replied to them. So let's take a look at the last part one more time. So getting a phone call is past tense. James got a phone call from Amy and then he was surprised. Why? Previously he had sent her lots of emails, but she never replied. So this is the first thing happened. Put the verb into the correct form, past perfect or simple past. Paul wasn't at the party when I arrived. He'd gone home. I felt very tired when I got home, so I went straight to bed. The house was very quiet when I got home. Everybody had gone to bed. Mark travels a lot. When I first met him, he had already traveled around the world. Sorry I'm late. The car broke down on my way here. we're driving along the road when we saw a car which had broken down, so we stopped. We stopped to help. Okay, friends, this is the conclusion of today's study. I will come back to you with another unit as soon as possible. Until then, keep studying English and have a great day. Bye.